Hi, everyone. I'm Wiley Blevins. I'm an author and editorial director at Raycraft Books, and I'd like to welcome you back to our Raycraft Read Alouds. Today, I'm going to read the second book in the Max and Friends series called Max at the Talent Show. And after I read this, I have a special treat for you. I'm going to show you about 10 minutes of an interview I did with the award-winning author, Kyle Lukoff. So after I read, stay seated, hang in there, and you'll get to meet this talented and wonderful writer. Max and the Talent Show, written by Kyle Lukoff, illustrated by Luciano Lozano. Chapter 1. My name is Max. I love to read. My favorite books are comic books. I also like funny books. Sometimes I read stories about magic or adventure. I don't like sad books. I have a friend named Steven. He likes to make up his own stories. He always has a lot of ideas. Sometimes he gets ideas from books. Other times, the ideas come from his head. Steven makes me play dress up with him. He gives me clothes that match his stories. Once I was a pirate. Another time I was a shark. Sometimes he wants me to put on a dress. I used to wear dresses, but now I don't, so I always say no. When I play with other friends, we run races and jump rope and climb trees. But when I play with Steven, he wants to make up stories. So he tells stories as we play. He will say that a train is chasing us. We run away as fast as we can. Or he will say that we are crossing a volcano. We hop and jump across the lake of fire. If we climb a tree, Steven will say we are in outer space. We talk to aliens on the moon. Steven and I go on a lot of adventures. Chapter 2. There is another big difference between me and Steven. He loves to be in the center of things. I don't like being watched. The school talent show is coming up. I don't want to be in it, but I don't want to be left out. Steven puts his name on the sign-up sheet. I'll be a star, he says. Do you want to be a star too? I think about what I would do. I don't like to sing. I don't dance. I don't play piano, but I do like to help my friends. I'll be your assistant, I tell Steven. What does an assistant do? It means I help you put on a show. Steven likes the idea. He loves to put on a show, and he loves to tell me what to do. First, I need to find a dress, says Steven. His mom drives us to the mall. The people who work at the store think the dress is for me. They don't want to let Steven try it on. But then he tells them a story. He tells them about a girl in a beautiful dress. She was stolen by goblins. If he can find a dress like hers, it will help him find her. They love the story. Steven gets to pick his favorite dress. I think it looks like an upside-down ice cream cone, but I don't tell Steven this. Are you going to sing for the talent show, I ask? But Steven is admiring his gown. Then we go to the shoe store. The shoe salesman doesn't like my stompy boots, and he tells Steven not to try on high heels. But Steven tells him a story about his grandmother. He says she was the most famous actress in the world. He says that her last wish was to find the shoes she wore in her first movie. Taken away by his words, the salesman gives Steven a pair of shoes. They have heels that click on the floor. Are you going to dance in the talent show? I ask. Steven doesn't answer. He is listening to the shoes as they click. Steven tells a story to find the perfect cape and a story for the perfect tiara. Are you going to play the piano? I ask. I don't even know if he plays the piano, but Steven doesn't hear me. He tilts the tiara so it sits just so. It glitters in the light. I wonder what he is going to do for the talent show. It is the night of the talent show. I help Stephen zip up his ice cream dress. He slips his feet into the clicking heels. I tie the cape around his neck. He places the tiara on his head, just so. What is your act? I ask. Stephen doesn't answer. He is smiling at himself in the mirror. The teacher in charge calls kids by name. One recites a poem. I don't understand it. Another does splits and cartwheels. It looks very hard. Someone plays the violin. It sounds like two cats fighting. I don't know what my job is now. Stephen doesn't say he needs help. When his name is called, he clicks onto the stage. What are you doing tonight, young man? The teacher asks. Stephen stares at the audience. He looks nervous and surprised. And that's when I know. He didn't choose a song. He didn't learn a dance. He didn't bring an instrument. He doesn't have a plan. But he picked me to be his assistant. What is my friend good at, I think? And then I know. Stephen, I whispered loudly, tell them the story. Will he know what I mean? He hears me. Stephen stands up straight. He doesn't look scared anymore. In a strong voice, he says, I will tell you a story. I will tell you a story of a stolen child. I will tell you about a movie star. I will tell you about a lost treasure and a found kingdom. And he does. His voice fills the room. At the end, they live happily ever after. My ears fill with the thunder of hands clapping. Stephen bows. He walks off the stage. His tiara glitters in the light. His cape flows behind him. His heels click on the floor. He hugs me tight. Then he pulls me out onto the stage. Everyone is still clapping. He bows again. He makes me bow with him. Everyone is looking at me. It feels okay, but I'm glad when we walk off the stage again. I couldn't have done that without you, he says. I know, I tell him. That's why I'm your assistant. And that's the story of Max and the Talent Show, illustrated by Luciano Lozano and written by the amazing Kyle Lukoff. So let me play a piece of the interview with Kyle. I'm going to play a few minutes of this, and you'll get an opportunity to hear him talk about this book and other books that he's written and get a sense of who he is and how he creates his stories. So I hope you enjoy. So Raycraft Books focuses on publishing books by authors and illustrators from underrepresented groups. So can you talk a little bit about your connection to the Max and Friends series?
Yeah, so Max is transgender in the same way that I am. I came out when I was much older. I didn't know that I was trans until I was already in college. And Max is like 5 or 6 years old, so there's that difference. But I think it's really important to be an openly trans person writing books for kids, right, so that all kinds of kids can see that no matter who they are, they can grow up to be writers and artists and just adults in the world where that part of their identity isn't something they have to hide. It's not something they have to be ashamed of. And it's also not something that they have to get over or get past or overcome. It can be something that is just a larger part of their life that influences who they are, but doesn't dictate who they have to be.
Right, right. So I want to talk a little bit about the book specifically. So when you sent in the manuscript for the first book, Call Me Max, one of the reasons why I contacted you right away that we wanted is it made me cry. And it made me cry because I felt like I was listening to a 6 or 7-year-old pour out his soul. And you have this beautiful way of capturing that. And I want everyone to listen to you read the beginning of chapter 2, because one of the things that's so beautiful about your writing is you have all these layers of emotion going on in your scenes. And it's deceptively simple. And I want people to hear these first 2 pages when Max goes to school the first time. Nobody knows that he identifies as being a boy, and this is what happens. So will you read that from the first book?
Yeah. So I can even hold it open and read like this.
You can?
Can I do this?
Sure.
Okay. So chapter 2. On the first day of school, the teacher called out our names. Emery, here. Stella, me. I raised my hand when she got to my name. She looked at me, and then back at the list of names, and then back at me again. I wondered if she thought my name didn't make sense for me. I felt that way too. Can you call me Max? I asked. Max is the boy in my favorite book. She nodded and wrote it down. I won't tell you what my old name was. That's private.
There's so much in this one spread. The teacher's instant acceptance. She just nods. It's not didactic. She's not trying to teach a lesson. She just has a raw human emotion about that. And for me, reading it as Max, the range of emotions he probably felt, maybe a little fear. He certainly was very brave in that moment. There's just so much going on. So I think it's very special. Now, I am in love with book 2.
This is
Max and the Talent Show.
This is one of my favorite things ever.
And it's with his best friend, Steven. One of his best friends, Steven. And I want to be friends with Steven. He is one of the characters that I'm so happy that we have books with Steven in this world. But what I love about this book, there's a lot that goes on, but it really at its heart is this really sweet friendship story. And there was a picture in the back that I wanted to show everyone that captures the heart of this book. And you can talk about the book after you show this, but it's just Max and Steven with their arms around each other after this sort of traumatic event that happens to them. So tell me a little bit about Steven and this book.
So this book, Max and the Talent Show, is about, it's not so much about Max, it's more about his little friend Steven. And Steven wants to be in the talent show. And first he makes sure that he has the perfect dress and the perfect tiara and the perfect shoes. But he doesn't think about another very important part of being in the talent show. And that's where the main climax comes at the end. And I wanted to write a story about a little boy who wants to wear a dress, where that is not the problem.
Absolutely.
I based this book a little bit on, so I'm basically Max in the story. I'm the helpful one. I like to help my friends. And Steven is both based on a friend of mine named Steven, but then also a lot of my other friends who are very similar to Steven.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So this fall, you went on a book tour, and you were promoting When Aiden Became a Brother, which was your picture book that came out last year, got all these star reviews, all this recognition. It was super exciting to see. And you were posting some things that were happening during this tour. And one of the things that really struck me was that you had mentioned some of the schools that you went to. Before you were able to speak to the classrooms, letters were sent home to the parents. And some children were withheld from those classrooms. So I'm very curious about your thoughts about that, what you would say to those children who weren't included in your talk or to their parents.
Well, first, before what I would say to those kids and their families, the first is that sometimes people would share that with me, that there would be families who pulled their children from my program. And sometimes it would be phrased in almost a congratulatory way, like, oh, only 2 or 3 families decided to remove their kids. Like, that's a good thing that only 2 or 3 families. And it's hard for me to express gratitude that there are families in a community who see my presence as a direct threat to the well-being of their children. I do not care what the number is.
Yeah.
The knowledge that exists is not something that I feel grateful for. I wouldn't say anything particularly special to those children because it's not their fault. And I know that I've never met a child who has a problem with trans people. The kids that I've met have uniformly been open and accepting and caring and thoughtful. To the parents, I don't know if I would choose, it's hard to choose to speak to people who see you as a direct threat to the well-being of their children on the basis of who I am.
Right.
Just of who I am. But I would encourage them to read my books and to think deeply about why they see my books as a problem. And I would ask them to look inside themselves and look at what are they afraid of? Because at the core of that is fear. They're afraid of something. And I don't know what that is. I do not know where that fear comes from. And I would like them to think a little bit more about what precisely they're afraid of.
Thank you. Thanks. So I want you to talk a little bit about what's next for you, including the 3rd book in the Max and Friends series, but other exciting things I know that's happening.
So the 3rd book in the Max series is called Max on the
Farm.
Farm. Max
Right.
on the Farm. And so the first book is about Max, and we meet his 2 friends, Stephen and Teresa. The second book is Max and Stephen. And the 3rd book is Max and Teresa's time to shine. And Teresa is very rough and tumble and very adventurous, and Max is still kind of shy and meek. But they go on an adventure together. And I love that story. I have another picture book coming out from Groundwood about poetry. It's called Explosion at the Poem Factory. And then my next big project comes out in 2021, and it's a middle grade novel from Dial Books at Random House called Live With That. I'm very excited for that.
Does that have LGBTQ content?
Sure does.
So share with everyone your first picture book also, because that's been out for a while.
Oh, my first picture book came out in May of 2018, and it's called The Storytime of Blevins. And it's about collective nouns.
And it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Con.
Thanks, Wiley.
So there you had a chance to meet the wonderful and talented Kyle Lukoff. I've read to you already 2 of the books in his series, and maybe I will talk Kyle into reading the first one for you. Please go to our website at www.raycraftbooks.com and let us know if there are any other books you want us to read. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon back at our Raycraft Reads. Have a great day, everyone.